Welcome, everyone, to Dark Loops Productions She-Hulking, a podcast of outcasts for discussing Marvel's new series, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. Today, we discuss episode 2, Superhuman Law. I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, a.k.a. Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist philosopher at Illinois State University.
I'm Dr. Shelly Clevenger, chair and professor of victim studies at Sam Houston State University, and self-proclaimed #1 fan of the Hulk.
That's big talk.
The OG She-Hulk. I almost put that last week instead of, the original, but, I didn't want to assume, but you didn't respond negatively, so I'll call it OG for now on.
All right.
And joining us on the show today, the one, the only, the hardest working man in comics, Mr. Victor Dandridge Jr. Victor, first of all, welcome to the show. We're so glad that you're here, man. Now, please tell us, or tell the audience, a little something about who you are, and then your favorite thing about the show so far.
Sure. I'm a self-publishing comic book creator, phenomenological narratologist. I teach people how to tell stories, which we were having a great discussion about that before. But what I love about this show is the maturity of it. There's a lot of things that in the MCU, there's been like a baseline level of accessibility that has been like little kid friendly. This one seems to be very teen centric at the very least, and up, if not young adults. So I've really appreciated the different voice that this show has established.
Yeah, just to riff on what you said there, Jessica Gao was one of the writers, Rick and Morty, and man, did it shine through in this episode. Some of the things that she had characters saying, I'm saying like, damn, I don't know if I'd have the courage to use that phrase as a writer, let alone an actor, but it played so well and so adult. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And I like that the writing is not afraid. The writers, all of it, it's not afraid to go there. Which is just like what you said, Scott, but it's like, they're going to go there. And I'm here for it.
Absolutely.
Can I just share a little bit about I pay attention to how I'm thinking when I watch this stuff, right? I know it happens. And
no, you're supposed to.
Okay. So I'm paying attention and I'm hearing some of these jokes. I'll talk about one of them specifically later. And I'm thinking like, I'm only going to be comfortable laughing at that if it was written by a woman. You know what I'm saying? I mean, how much have we praised Bendis for Jessica Jones? Yet, nonetheless, I'm thinking, should I laugh? Should I not laugh? And then I'm looking for the source material, and that gives me permission to laugh. And I just thought that's something kind of emerging out of our current cultural conversation. And I thought, okay, it's there.
So if I can jump on that one, that's a very tricky space to be in, right? To qualify why you can find something funny is almost a dangerous thing because it attacks the natural human response of that's funny. Like, it doesn't matter if it's wrong, is it funny? And this is such a great show to have that conversation because I literally just rewatched the first episode as well. But to talk about the duality of truth, how you can have two things that are absolutely true that seemingly oppose one another. You can have something that is like, well, that's wrong. That's not okay. You're like, you're absolutely right. And it is absolutely funny all at the same time.
And before I get a bunch of hate mail about, my self-reflection being problematic for comedy sources, I do want to say it wasn't my cognitions that were so much judgy. It was my emotional state that was judgy. I'm like, wait, that's pretty deep. You should be that judgy at that level. But anyway, it was tons of fun.
Nothing wrong with that.
This all reflects into the first question that I'm going to ask today. So my favorite part of the episode was whenever the She-Hulk says, I don't want to be a superhero. Superheroes are narcissists and billionaires. And I wanted to slow clap, stand up and slow clap.
And adult orphans.
Yeah, and adult orphans, which I also loved. So my question to you all is, what do you think about that statement? Do you think it's accurate? Examples you want to give?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go first, man, because I got a whole world.
So hardcore.
Yes, exactly.
So she's absolutely right. And it is a very clear finger point at Tony Stark being the only superhero of the MCU. Everyone else was either a victim of circumstance, a hired soldier who happened to acquire other abilities, powers, whatever. They were assigned this role. Tony Stark is the only one to basically volunteer for superhero life. Even arguably, Spider-Man was given the, with great power speech. And yes, we saw that happen very specifically in No Way Home, but the idea that we all, cognitively had this understanding of is that he was given that speech before. It's a form of conscription. You have this power, therefore you should be this person for others. Tony's the only one that's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna save the world today. Yeah, me. I'm gonna do it. Just me. Don't even worry about everybody else. Literally, going back to Iron Man 1, you have Nick Fury telling him, like, this is what we want you to say. This is what you're supposed to do. This was a bodyguard, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, nah, I'm Iron Man. Let's go.
Exactly.
He is the only
Black
superhero
Sabbath in the background. Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. So you're right, particularly in how the MCU's rolled these characters out, and I gotta say, I think they did everything you said, and there's a little bit of tongue in cheek in the sense that they knew they were setting that character up. They knew they were, in a sense, critiquing an American individualist approach to heroism, right? Because in the end, all those portals open up and the world saves the world. Tony Stark gets his moment of glory, right? They had to do that. But I think, the reference to the adult orphan is, of course, Batman. And I've been on more and more panels where I end up saying stuff like, what about a heroic culture? Why do we have to have heroic individuals? Why can't the supervillain be poverty? Why can't the supervillain be racism? Right. And that's because we have a hard time attacking concepts. Even though there's some interesting things that have been done at the national level recently. I won't go into politics, but we're seeing things that we haven't seen in a while, and it's very exciting. But I think this is a continuing sort of MCU sub-critique, tongue-in-cheek. I don't know if they'd say it this way, but a sort of American individualist approach to heroism. That's my vibe.
Yeah, and I would say too, right after that, something that she said that I've also thought was, does the Avengers provide health care? What about maternity leave? Are they a good employer?
So like I do and I don't. Like I love to think about what the writers are thinking as they write, right? Because when you look at written by, it's only Jessica Gao. There's no one else written for television by Jessica Gao. And you can tell she's in that heroic culture thinking space when she says, what about healthcare? It's not She-Hulk she's necessarily talking about. It's the whole damn country. Right?
I mean, that's not untrue.
So I give her tons of credit. It's not as cynical as Rick and Morty. There's a little more concern for things that are.
I don't know, man. No, because so in the MCU setup, the person who theoretically is funding the Avengers is Tony. So in that very specific way, she's still, kind of being that very critical person. Yeah. Whereas in the comics, at least the Avengers became under the UN charter. So there was, worldwide funding that went to the Avengers that would supply these types of things. When it's just Tony, technically they're all employees of Stark Industries. If he's paying them anything, living quarters, whatever. So these are viable questions considering his background as a warmonger. These are
So this leads to a conversation about The Boys and the idea of privatized altruism, privatized superheroes, and privatization is just so rampant in our culture. It's the oxygen we breathe culturally. We don't even know it's there. We don't know a sidewalk's there. We just walk on it. We don't know everything's privatized. We just walk on it. And I love this pulling apart what heroism is. Do they have a healthcare plan? All of that gets to raising awareness about the level of privatization we're living in, and will continue to live in probably.
Scott, I gotta tease you just a little bit. Just
Go
a little
ahead,
bit.
man.
You did the pop cultural faux pas of what is now is the thing to link to. Yes, The Boys definitely does this, but considering that this is an MCU conversation, we did start talking about Iron Man. He has this conversation in Iron Man 2 when he's brought before Congress over the relinquishing of the Iron Man armor system, suit, whatever, to the government. And he has that idea of privatization of superheroics, things like that. Like that's within the MCU. He has had that conversation. How I am Iron Man and you can't have Iron Man because then that's indentured servitude. And we can't do that because then you would own me and we can't do that. Like they have played with that concept flippantly, admittedly, but definitely did that. Yeah.
No, I get you. In the Boys, Homelander's running around killing everybody.
Right.
And that same vibe, private versus public, plays out in The Godfather 2. I think we may have even talked about this recently on a panel, right? All these narratives that kind of capture what criticize what heroism is, and is it truly being an individual of power, or is it a powerful culture? And someone saved me from being so serious this morning.
No, this is awesome. This is a good way to start. We gonna get looser from here. I love it.
So I'm gonna ask your guys' opinion on one particular point of humor, because I loved it, and then I felt like, oh crap, I'm not supposed to laugh because that's inappropriate, right? And that's when She-Hulk meets the competing attorney, the guy who, said, oh, you pulling that She-Hulk stuff so you can win the case and stuff. And she meets him in the bar and they have a silly conversation. And he goes, oh, there's an attractive woman over there. I'm going to go talk to it. And I thought, damn, I mean, that's the writer making fun of him totally. And that gets to your point about this being mature. Right. When Beavis and Butthead was out and people were laughing at Beavis and Butthead, it was importantly understood they were laughing at them, not with them.
Exactly.
Right. Because little kids would see older people laughing and not know. And that's the thing about adult humor. It's got that, I'll call that recursive edge on it. So what do you guys think about that? Like, did you have a reaction to it? Did you just laugh? Am I way too uptight? It wasn't funny at all.
Shelly?
It was funny. I watched it. So I watched this show with my daughter, who's 7. And so she didn't understand that. Like,
right.
And so you're absolutely right about the adult humor. And things that, my husband and I laugh at, she'll ask us why it's funny. And it's not like we can necessarily describe it. But, she laughs at other things that we don't laugh at. So I think that the show can be adult, but it can also be kid friendly. Like I don't necessarily laugh at her like smashing things or like things falling down or but no, I did. I laughed at it, and I like seeing that.
Yeah.
I like seeing it in a Marvel mainstream show that lots of people watch. So I loved it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, for clarification, I do want to ask: was he part of the opposing attorney team, or was he that guy Dennis that was supposed to be on her team?
Well, the guy that was supposed to be on her team.
Okay. So that presentation of Dennis is a deeper, furthering point of view of how dickish he is. Like without like, right? Because in the first episode, when he's like, well, I think it would be better coming from me, he gave no reason or rationale why it should be him. He just felt like, I'm that guy, it should be me, blah blah blah.
Right.
And what better way to showcase that than for him to so demeaningly degrade a woman by calling her it. And it's also something that I think is very interesting because it plays into some of the conversations from the first episode where clearly Jen Walters feels a certain kind of way about men's attitudes, specifically demeaning attitudes towards women, but she didn't check him on that one. And there's almost this new balance that's exacerbated. I mean, she talked about it before, I can't get mad, I can't do this because then I'm the angry woman, I'm emotional. But now she's clearly shown that she can Hulk out and she can literally kick him to the moon. So she has to eat that phrasing, no matter how much that might grind her, because she realizes like, I could literally break you if I respond to that like I want to. And that becomes even more of this undercurrent theme, I think, of what it's going to mean for Jen to be a Hulk, and trying to have a very grounded presentation of, I'm not a monster. Like, yes, Bruce has had this conversation, like, they'll see you as a monster. She's like, they'll see me as a monster on a totally different level than they'll see you. And I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want it at all.
Exactly.
It's
Go ahead.
like it was a good representation of what it's like to be a woman in the workplace, especially a male dominated workplace, which I've been in for a long time. And where, you know, men often will say, I think I can do this better, right? Or I know better. The best example I can give you all is once I was talking about my area of research, and someone was recommending a book to me that I had wrote.
Stop.
So I could learn more about this area. And I was like, no, I'm Shelly Clevenger. And they're like, no, like she has a PhD. I'm like, yeah.
Damn.
So I feel like watching She-Hulk and having somebody try to be like, I think I should do that, or I'm the one who could, you know, be the better one to do it. Like a lot of women probably really have felt that at one point or another in their professional lives. Absolutely.
And go ahead, Victor.
I just got to know, like, when they realized who they were talking to, how did you make, like, did you gracefully allow that one to just kind of bow out, or did you needle that one just a little bit? Because I would have needled. I would absolutely have been like, so what am I supposed to learn from this book? Like, references, please. Tell me a passage that really mattered to you, because it clearly wasn't the picture at the back of the book. I just want to know.
No, I was very nice. I'm always nicer than I need to be. She-Hulk. That's what that is right there. That's what that is right there. That's real. That's real.
I'd have just used my dad's Mississippi accent and said, "Bless your heart."
Bless your whole heart.
Oh
you clearly have never read this book before. I see.
Yeah. Shelly, those moments, you know, those are the kind of things you say. Think, if I write this in my memoir, everybody's gonna think I made it up, because this doesn't happen, right?
This doesn't happen.
That's fantastic. So look, I'm gonna read another line, because, like I said, the writing for me, of course, the acting is stunning, and at the same time, I can't even exist without being a derivative of Hulk. Your reactions to that line?
Genius, absolutely genius.
As a matter of fact, Shelly pegged that last conversation, right? Her name's even derivative. I thought that was fantastic. Let me see. Oh, this is the billionaires are narcissists.
Wait. Let's riff on that little derivative of a Hulk.
Yeah, please do.
Because I find that conversation point, that line, hits at such a level, because how many people, for whatever reason, claim to be comic book fans, but believe that this show was an agendized, we're going to make Hulk female now, as opposed to recognizing that this character has existed for more than 40 years. She-Hulk is older than I am, okay? Like, that is such an important piece to recognize. And I feel like in the weirdest sort of way, this was a response to something that, I don't even, like, they couldn't know for sure that was going to be the response, but it was the response, and they already built in this conversation piece within the show about it. So, I mean, you talk about fourth wall breaking. Yeah, that's huge, absolutely huge. And I thought it was genius. I thought it was absolute genius.
I did too. And the Hulk, you know, I love the Hulk, right? No one loves the Hulk more than me, the Incredible Hulk. But yeah, She-Hulk's been around for a long time. She's had her own comic. She's had her own adventures. This isn't something that, like, you know, leftist feminists have decided to bring into the world for whatever reason. And so I love that they lean into that. And I also love that she didn't like the name, right? She didn't love being She-Hulk. You know, and I don't know that I love that name too, to be completely candid. I love the She-Hulk. I love the comics that I have as a kid, but I kind of wish she had a different name.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's deep. Now that opens up a lot of questions, because in all the years of her existence, no one has ever given her another name. Like, it's always been She-Hulk. But I am curious about this though. Is she She-Hulk in title, or is that a code name? Has anyone ever called her She-Hulk in the field? I can't say that I've seen a book where that's happened. Yeah. Because like I've seen Jonathan Hickman has a fascinating run with Fantastic Four, and she delivers a talk, and Reed Richards specifically calls her Jen Walters. Yeah. Like that's her name. Like She-Hulk might be a title, but that's not a name that she goes by under any circumstance. So I think that's an interesting move.
And I do think if given that's the case, I do think the title when it came out was derivative. It had to draw, it was a way to draw in Hulk fans. And what's funny, beautiful about now is that it's being reappropriated by a woman. Right. A woman writer, a woman actor, and they're saying, okay, y'all are going to talk She-Hulk. This is how we're going to talk She-Hulk now. And you're right. I don't know that if people call her She-Hulk in the show, I bet it's to be an insult.
Kind of. Yeah.
People will use it as an insult.
Yeah.
Let me go on to another line here. She's walking through her new employment center, and she just realized why she got the job. Right. And she says, I should be able to enjoy the fact that I got an amazing new job. And I can't. And then she walks by a room of laughing men. These dodos never had to deal with this on their first day at work. Reactions to those lines, because they're funny and they're insightful and they cut deep.
It's 100% accurate. I mean, anybody who's a woman, a person of color, a minority in any way, probably felt that way at one time or another.
And the guys laughing in the office, that's how privilege walks. Right? That's just how it walks. It's, you get to a point in your life where you start seeing everybody's behaviors being diagnostic of what they're not doing. Right. And as they're sitting there laughing, what they're not doing is work. Right. And they're reveling in the fact that we're making money and we're not working right now. And they don't say that, but it's right there in their behavior. And I got to tell you, I thought the way Jessica Gao wrote her boss, the actor's brilliant, the lines are brilliant. I got to say, there's an admiration where, for me, admiration means just clarity of character, where she's thinking about whether or not she wants to take the job. And he goes, let me make this clear. If you don't take this job, you're not working for us.
Yeah. And
he didn't say it with vitriol. He was an which means he's so comfortable with his power, he doesn't care at all how she feels if she doesn't get this job. He doesn't care at all how she feels. And I thought, man, how much privilege and how much time have you had to be in that role to have your empathy so blocked that you don't care you might be hurting someone by not giving them a job. I'll just throw that out there.
That's an interesting take. I have a different take on him specifically, as though he is a cognitive neutral in terms of how he moves. Like he cognitively won't take into emotions negatively or positively. He's like, this is the truth, and that's all I'm going to operate on is this bare factoid truth. You need a job. We have a job opening for you. Here's all the perks. There you go. But if you don't take this assignment, you don't get this job, because we need this job. Like, bottom line, that's what it is. Clear cut, no fuss, no muss. I'm not gonna hold you about it. I'm gonna tell you flat out, if you choose not to take on this case, there is no job for you.
So I'm going to agree with you on his neutral appearing presentation. Before he sits at the desk with her, he's telling a secretary, well, tell this person they're going, and tell this guy he's going to Minnesota because it's cold there and I want him to know I sent him there because he hates the cold. So there is this low simmering rejoicing in power, right? That lets him pretend he's cool and aloof. And I think that's how you have to be when you have that much power and you can end someone's financial life like that, right? I mean, so anyway, I thought the guy's well played, well written, and
definitely well played. Definitely.
Yeah, and I want to say Abomination is terrible. So as a Hulk fan and true Hulk supporter, Abomination in the comics, this is a spoiler for people who haven't read the comics. I mean, he poisons Betty Ross, who's the Hulk's wife, and then the Hulk thinks that it's all his fault from the radiation that she I mean, he's a horrible. And so we were watching it, and it's like, I guess if you hadn't read the comics, you're like, you know what? Maybe he did change. He seems like he's all right. He does yoga now. And I'm just like, he is horrible. And I felt vindicated in the show when he.
So in the comics, did this, because what they did with the narrative line here is kind of ambiguate his moral culpability, because he says, no, I was working for your government. They gave me super serum and I went and fought a threat that they sent me to. So I thought I was the hero. Is anything like that coming out of the comics, or is that contemporary rewrite?
Yeah, that's definitely contemporary rewrite, because he was absolutely a Russian operative in comics, like during the Cold War.
During the Cold War, the comics were coming out, and he's always been a villain.
Okay, then.
He's a bad dude.
You know, go ahead, man.
I do like how, so what Jessica did specifically with the writing of this piece was she played that angle wisely. What he said, arguably true, right? Like, these are the things that happen. I thought I was the good guy. I was the good soldier. I was doing what I was told.
Yeah.
What she does in terms of setting up the idea of his moral negative compass, that he's actually still not a good guy, was the reference to his 7 soulmates that he met while in prison. The idea that he has determined that there are 7 people that he is so connected with that they should buy him land.
Yeah.
That's the part where I'm like, that's a subtle way of saying he is not a good person. He is a manipulator. He has convinced 7 different people that he cherishes them, because you have to ask the question, do these 7 people know of each other? Chances are they don't. Right. And therefore, he is a manipulator. And what he's saying, you can only take so far. Yes, there's truth to it, but there's always a manipulation underneath. Because he's not telling the whole story. Like, yes, he was given the super soldier serum, but he did pursue extra amounts of gamma content all on his own outside of what he was supposed to do, which is why he got in trouble. He's not telling that part because it's hearsay. No one else knows. It's just him and Stern that know that. We don't know where Stern is after his big head grew. He was missing for years. But, you know, like that's a sincere, you know, move that I think in terms of the writing, that they were trying to show like he's not actually a morally sound person.
There you go. My biggest concern about that character is he did nothing good for the haiku writing community. I mean, we don't need that evilness. Some of us are actually trying to put positivity and holistic understandings in the world by putting haikus on Facebook every other day.
I love the haikus.
Bringing the joy, man. Absolutely.
I gotta tell you what. And then the humor, where he says, I've written all these heartfelt haikus. And she goes, don't send the haikus. And he goes, no, these are truly heartfelt. And he goes, my listening ears. And then the quality of the comedy pays off later when Bruce says, yeah, he sent me a
sent me one, man. And I believe him. Like, this is real.
I just love that kind of writing. And you know, I mean, I like to say I wish I could be in the writing room, because it's the creative process where you get something out on the paper and then you come back to it and it lets you do something else. And you can't do that something else unless you did something first. And the work of the creativity is something I'm just a big fan of. And I'm sure that they're writing that scene with Bruce, and it's like, oh my God, the haiku thing, of course, you know, and it comes out and they all laugh in the room. Anything else you guys want to say about this episode?
I personally loved how they dialed it down a little bit. This was more about Jen and her relationship with She-Hulk and not fights and tights sort of scenario. Because they could have quickly followed that up with the whole entrance of Titania with another fight. And they said, no, this is a legal show and we're going to talk law. And that's a brilliant move, because it's such a twist from what is expected of an MCU piece. It's supposed to be all superheroics, and they're like, nah, these are people. Let's talk about the people.
They're going to spend time getting us to know her. And another thing about the humor is she has plenty of sarcasm in her, but it also ends up applying to herself. Mm-hmm. And this is what I appreciate about the comedic use of sarcasm. I'm being so damn serious this morning, but sarcasm is a stress response. It's a way for people to sort of deal with tense situations in ways that kind of deflect the emotion a bit. And I'm fine with that, but not everybody has the time or space to turn their stress into jokes. Mm-hmm. And so when people take sarcasm and make it a goal, it seems so anti-hope to me. You know, you're not even worth. I mean, sarcasm, you know, when my kids would get sarcastic, it's like, yo, here's what you're telling me. I'm so ridiculously stupid that it's not even worth saying anything because I can't get it. That's what sarcasm means, right? And I got no time for all that non-hope. I got to hope that I'm smart enough. You know, so I get
that's how fathers are supposed to be with their kids, man. We're supposed to be like, no, hold on, I can still get this. I'm not too old for getting that yet. Don't talk to me like that.
Yeah, well, I would usually resort to something like, well, I'm the one paying for that damn phone that lets you get on the internet and do stuff to make fun of me, right? So just, you know, I'm doing my bit here. But I love the way that she's just got, it's all over. It's herself, it's the world. It's like a Jessica Jones that doesn't have the deep, dark, you know, backstory, trauma-driven superhero thing. It's an accomplished woman. It's almost, hey, you know, it might be like one of the first American Wonder Women.
Yes.
Right?
Very, very much so.
You know, never thought of it that way, but she doesn't have that. And I kind of hope they don't introduce that, right? I like the idea of a non-traumatized person doing this.
Well, that's kind of the point of what her story kind of is she's refusing to let her superheroic event traumatize her out of her life. Yes. She's like, no, I'm hell-bent that I'm going to be able to still do what I was aiming to do. Maybe I do have a greater responsibility that I'm going to have to learn how to integrate, but I'm not going to dismiss and dissolve who I was because this has now happened to me. Like, no way.
I love it. And okay, go ahead, Shelly.
I was going to say, one of the things that I really liked, the after credits scene where she's like helping her dad.
I'm glad you're hydrating, Dad.
It was funny, but then I also feel like it really spoke to who she was.
Yes.
For help, she's helping her dad. She's doing household stuff, you know, in a way that we don't maybe see other superheroes do, or maybe that even other superheroes would. And I loved it. It was one of my favorite things about this week's episode.
You know, let's cut to the quick on that one. It's not only that, but they were things that normally you don't allow women to do.
That's right.
She was carrying the weight. She was picking up the car. She was doing all the things, putting the men in a secondary spot of, you had to ask me to do this. Like,
and her cousin, who's a manager at Best Buy.
The Best Buy.
I love Best Buy. I'm just saying the whole thing.
Good job, Chad.
The whole thing about changing the tire, you got to loosen the lug nuts before you jack the car. That's the first thing you got to teach your kids is crack those nuts.
1,000,000%.
What I also love about what you're saying there, Shelly and Victor, is this is a blue collar superhero.
Yes.
Right. In other words, you know, they make that clear with her family. She makes it clear she had to borrow 6 figures to become a lawyer. She goes home for family dinner. She's not sitting in a penthouse somewhere, ignoring, you know, and I'm not trying to put any judgy value stuff on there, but it is a particular type of story. And her father actually helped her. You know, got her out of the stupid family space, tried to prevent this family space from happening and couldn't, which happens to all of us, right?
Right.
And then he says, no, I did that because I need to see if you're okay.
Yeah. And
then he says, hey, you know, you're not the first Hulk we've had to deal with in this family. It's hilarious.
Beautiful.
And then and he says, look, now you didn't die. You're here now. You get to move forward. And I think that's helpful to have those people around who just, you know, okay, let's keep moving. Dust yourself off. So now she's going to help her dad. And that's a relationship we don't often see in television, let alone the superhero show. So I thought
he sees her on all levels. Like, yes, you're still my little girl. and I'm still going to take care of you. But I also recognize that you can lift up the back of this car so we can change the tire. That's a brilliant dichotomy, right? Like every person alive has always wanted to be seen as that by their parents, right? Like, yes, you are grown. You're still my child, but you are in fact grown. Same conversation piece, just showcased visually in a amazing visual context is amazing.
Dude, that was on target. You know, mutual respect. This is what I bring to the game. This is what you bring to the game. Let's take care of each other and get through this mess we call life. Yes. Absolutely.
This was a great show. My wife and I, we were talking about last week's episode, and I saw a TikTok guy that had a very interesting point of view. And I think that it becomes a great conversation because there is a duality of conversation there, where when she was trying to explain to Bruce how she manages her anger on a regular basis, that there is an absolute truth to what she's saying. But at the same time of her truth, there is a level of dismissing what he's trying to tell her is a new level of anger that you've never experienced before because you can't have experienced it before this. And we had a great conversation about, you know, whether or not that was at all dismissive. And I said that, you know, what I found is that in so many ways, our personal core ideological truths do blind us to see other people's truths as true. And it's such a very interesting thing to have rewatched that first episode. And Bruce is talking about the dual truths of scenarios and how, you know, that's more prevalent than we typically think of. And if we do think of it, we dismiss it as spiritual. And he's like, no, it's a clinical truth that this is true. And this seemingly opposite thing is also true. Embrace both, because that's the reality. You know, it was such an interesting conversation.
We got to keep riffing for that. I'm going to get that edited in because Bruce does, it's dialectical behavior therapy. And what's bizarre for me is that dialectics are means that things don't get their meaning all on their own. They get their meaning in relation, which allows the and that's honestly a philosophical way of thinking that was very prominent in Europe in the early 1900s, and American and British philosophers and particularly scientists said, no, we're not going to think that way. We're going to think reality is made up of things that are independent, that are related to each other. So you get rid of relational thinking in science because math and logic don't have you build the relations in, you know, with the plus signs and stuff, but the numbers, they're not seen as relational. I know I'm going on, but it's just amazing that now we got to take the relational nature of the human condition and we got to make sure we label it because we forgot it.
Right.
And this and vibe, it's so powerful. I've seen it's the simplest way to teach people relational thinking. And that is, you know, and baby, or some people say and or, I'm not sure. But
well, I think that's even more interesting because Bruce, in his explanation of it, is failing at it at the same time. Right. Because what he is seemingly failing at is recognizing that while they are both now Hulks, she is a different Hulk. And it takes him time to understand that and scenario that, yes, you're absolutely right. You both have this unifying, quantifiable experience piece, but then there's a piece of her that you could never quantify in the exact same way because it's not you and it would never be you. And so how she's going to deal with it can't be the same way you do because it's got to be different. And it takes him a while before he gets that. And it's so crazy because like you were just telling her this truth, but you didn't see it from her truth. Like you only saw it from yours. And it's such a fascinating sort of give and take.
I got to decide if this conversation is going to be bonus material or if we're just going to leave it in the raw cut, because check it out. You know, the thing you just said, that he's preaching dialectic thinking, but yet can't manifest it in the moment. That's the curse of the way brains move. What brains do is they create a coherent space. Like I'm looking at the microphone, I'm looking at my finger. And when I'm in that space, I'm keeping other possible things out The brain has to do that to be able to have things. So the curse is that we say it's all relational, but we don't see it that way because our brain culls stabilities out of everything going on. Wow. And that curse is our strength and our weakness, right? What I will say is David Bowie knew that curse. David Bowie lived that curse by never trying to have to answer questions one side or the other. Never having to be one person or the other, just engaging the contradiction and moving through it. So, damn, I had no idea we'd be talking this kind of stuff this morning. No, I love it, man. Damn.
My bad.
Well, She-Hulk leads to relational ontology.
This is a great series. Like,
yeah, it is a good series.
Yeah.
And the insight that Bruce couldn't manifest his own thinking in that moment is how we go. It's how we run. Right. And we need people around us to perturb us out of our, what I used to call it Coen brother bubbles, because I love the Coen brothers. I love their writing. But now I call it Wanda bubbles, because I think Wanda, they did a great job of capturing her world in a space, literally and metaphorically. And so, look, I got some viewer mail here.
Okay, so this is from Josh's aunt, my aunt-in-law.
Oh, that's cool. What's her name?
Beth Roble Sandorum. And so she said, love the interview. I didn't love growing up reading the comics, but enjoy the shows and movies. Your interview really connected me on what characters and their relationships represent.
Look at that, doing the work.
It's a great one. Yeah.
Well, when the writing is so good and the company is so top notch, good things are going to happen. Right. So, absolutely. And thanks for writing in there. Appreciate it.
Of course. Absolutely.
And then the other one was my mom.
Awesome.
Kathleen Clevenger.
Hello, Kathleen.
And so she said she listened to this and it was great. And we had great discussions.
We did have great discussions.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Again, great company and great writing. That's why if a show's not written well, I don't like to continue podcasting it, because I don't have time for, first of all, I don't have time for doing other people's work,
And you're a positive guy. If you don't like it, you don't like to dwell on the fact that you don't like something.
No. And Victor, how you're always rewriting scripts and plot lines and such,
do that all the
right?
time.
You need to get paid for that, right? You don't want to do someone else's work.
I mean, you're not wrong, but there is that thing in me that I will rewrite something that's bad. Like, well, okay, if I can please. Okay, so there was one scene that I would have rewritten from the first episode just to change it just a little bit in context of some personality traits that I think would have been interesting for Jen to have. Jen being very go-getter, like, I can do this, I know I can do this. I would have played it so that when the accident happens, Bruce is a little bit more conscious and tells her, don't come near me, I'm bleeding. And she's like, let me help you. Like, I'm certified, I'm EMT, let me help you. And when that happens, the act of her becoming She-Hulk, she is somewhat culpable for, because he's trying to tell her, don't come near me right now. Like, this could be bad. The way that it plays, as he's gaining consciousness, he tells her, but she's already helping him. So it's almost a moot point. Like, the happenstance of her getting his blood on her becomes so very, like, well, it was incidental. Like, he didn't tell her fast enough. There was nothing she could have done because she's trying to help. But if he's cognizant enough to be like, no, don't do this, get away. I think my inhibitor's broken. Like, move, like, get away from me. And she's like, no, let me help you. That creates something very interesting, because then in his conversations of her being a superhero, it speaks more to a tenacity that she's already proven. You want to help people. Yeah. So you're more apt to do that because that's who you naturally are. It's not, something where I felt like he was kind of like putting on her that she's a superhero now, and that's not really what she wanted. So that's kind of the thing for me in that regard. I would have rewritten that
so
way.
You want to rewrite it in terms of the opening scene from Princess Mononoke with Ashitaka
There it is.
Taking his own agency to save the village and being cursed when he saves the village. I mean,
Exactly.
that's I like to talk about that as the curse of caring, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to be a person who cares, you're going to end up in parts of the world where you're going to just run into things that are going to change you, right? And so I like that idea of people going into those spaces through their own agency.
Right.
And then struggling with what it means for them. And the curse of caring. It's not like people care and everybody runs around with a smile on their face.
Right.
Well, and it's how the Hulk became the Hulk. He saved Rick Jones.
Yes.
Exactly.
From radiation.
There it is.
Yeah.
I think that would have played into it just a little bit better, because that's the thing that we didn't get from this iteration of the Hulk. It wasn't Rick Jones MCU Hulk. It was trying to recreate the super soldier serum, which is something different. So to really kind of give that little head nod that she's rushing in to save him, when he's like, no, stop, don't. And she's like, no, I can do this. Let me help you. Exact dichotomy of what actually happened in the comics for Bruce that we didn't get in the MCU. It's just one of those little throwback, sort of things. But I still love the show. I still have enjoyed it quite a bit in spite of that.
I think you're absolutely right. And, when Jessica Gao comes on the show and retcons that scene for us, we'll get all that. The thing is, for me, these things are about agency.
Yeah.
What does this agent do? What does that agent do? And so on the one hand, they're characters. On the other hand, they're just moving versions of the human condition. And the agency, the choice, and the curse of caring is just something that's huge with me. I think that's a really good point. Anything else you guys want to say about this show, this episode?
It's great. Can't wait for the next one.
There you go.
Yes.
All righty. Well, so that's about it then, I guess, for this episode. Victor, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you on social media?
Of course, you guys can find me at Vantage In-House on all forms of social media. Definitely check out vantageinhouse.com, which is my self-publishing imprint home. You can see all the great books that I've written and self-published with some phenomenal co-creators in this business. Fantastic. How about you, Shelly?
At Dr. Clevenger on Twitter. I also want to say I'm a huge fan of Victor and all his work. So support him, follow him.
That's fantastic. You can find all episodes of Dark Loops Productions on YouTube at the Dark Loops Productions channel. If you want to write in, tell us we got it right, tell us we got it wrong, you can do so on Facebook, do so on this YouTube page, or send an email to darkloopsproductions@gmail.com. And as you just saw, we'll be more than happy to read it and riff on it during our next episode. So Victor, thank you very much for being here. Absolute blast. You truly are the phenomenological narratologist, and we appreciate all your contributions. So there it is. From all of us to all of you, big hugs. And remember, smash the patriarchy.
Yes. Yes.
Bye-bye.